You're lying on bare ground in southern Africa 77,000 years ago. No ceiling, just a shelf of rock and the smoke of a dying fire. Beneath you, a mattress of woven sedge, replaced by hand, topped with crushed leaves that keep the mosquitoes off. No door, no walls, no roof you paid for. And still warm, dry, and fast asleep. Now open your eyes. A thermostat, 4 walls you pay for whether or not you sleep well behind them. So how did ancient humans go hundreds of thousands of years with no homes at all and still sleep through the night? Start where the evidence begins, and with the thing almost everyone gets wrong. Picture ancient human, and you picture a cave. But most of them never lived deep in caves. Caves are simply where the past survives, sheltered from rain, sealed by rockfall, protected from the erasing work of time. The famous painted caves came later, and even those were mostly visited. Places people entered to make art or ritual, then left. Home was somewhere else, out where the wind and the rain carried the evidence away. What we dig up is the exception, not the rule, and even the exceptions are far stranger than you'd guess. In 2016, a team led by archaeologist Jacques Daubert published what they found more than 300 meters inside Brunekel Cave in southwestern France, far past any reach of daylight in total dark. Rings, low walls built from roughly 400 broken stalagmites snapped to a consistent length and stacked with obvious care. The whole assembly weighing something like 2 tons. Uranium dating put them at about 176,000 years old. And here's the detail that rearranges the picture in your head. The builders weren't our species at all. They were Neanderthals. The ones you were taught were the slow, brutish also-rans, organizing stone and fire deep underground more than 100,000 years before the first Homo sapiens ever set foot in Europe. So this was one clever group, a lucky fluke? Not even close. Go back to that bed in southern Africa. In 2011, archaeologist Lynn Wadley and her colleagues described it in the journal Science, from a rock shelter called Sibudu. The bedding was real, compacted layers of sedge and rushes, built up as people returned to the same overhang for tens of thousands of years. But the detail that stops you is what sat on top. The sleepers had capped the bedding with leaves from a tree called Cryptocarya woodi, whose crushed foliage releases compounds that drive off mosquitoes and biting insects. Every so often, they burned the old bedding away to clear the pests, then laid down fresh. And there was a reason to build it thick. Your body bleeds heat fastest into whatever you lie on. That packed sedge wasn't a luxury. It was insulation holding your warmth in against a floor that would drain it all night. 77,000 years ago, someone had already solved the problem of bugs in the bed. That isn't bare survival. That's interior design. But comfort is one thing. What kept out the cold? The answer was never really walls. It was fire. The one piece of shelter a person could pick up and carry. At Wonderwork Cave, also in South Africa, a team including geoarchaeologist Francisco Berna found microscopic ash and scorched bone pressed into sediment roughly 30 meters inside the cave, too far in for a wildfire to reach. In 2012, they dated it to around 1 million years ago, some of the oldest solid evidence anywhere of humans controlling flame. And fire did more than warm the dark. It cooked food, unlocking calories that raw meat and roots kept hidden, and it held predators back past the edge of the light. It even stretched the day. A tended fire turned the terrifying hours after sunset into time to sit, to eat, to talk. The first evening any human ever had. A hearth is a home you can carry and relight anywhere. That single trick sheltered our ancestors more than any wall ever would. So when did people start building homes from scratch out in the open? Earlier than the old textbooks like to admit. On the shore of the Sea of Galilee sits a site called Ohalo II, drowned for millennia and then laid bare when a drought dropped the lake in 1989. Because it had spent so long underwater, things that normally rot survived intact. Archaeologist Danny Nadel and his team uncovered the floors of 6 brush huts, walls of bent branches and grass, with beds of soft plant matter arranged deliberately around the hearths, and the charred remains of tens of thousands of seeds and fruits nearby. They're roughly 23,000 years old. That is, 10,000 years before the first farming villages. People were furnishing their homes long before anyone thought to plant a field beside one, and the most ambitious builders of all didn't use branches. They used mammoths. In 1965, a farmer in Mezhyrich, in what is now Ukraine, was digging a cellar when he struck a lower jaw the size of an armchair. It was the first bone of an entire settlement built from the animals themselves. Around 15,000 years ago, on a frozen treeless plain where wood was almost impossible to find, people raised domed houses out of tusk and bone. One dwelling alone used the remains of about 95 mammoths. Jaws locked into interlocking rows, tusks arched over the entrance, several tons of bone standing braced against the wind. These weren't quick overnight camps. They were engineered, decorated with pigment, and built to hold through winters that could kill an exposed person in a single afternoon. But strip all of it away, the mammoth domes, the stalagmite rings, the carry fire, the bug-proofed beds, and something much simpler is left underneath. The thing that actually kept our ancestors alive was never the structure. It was the people inside it. One human, alone in real cold, freezes and dies, Fold 6 or 8 bodies in around a single fire, and the group generates and traps enough heat to outlast a night that would have killed any one of them alone. They shared warmth, traded shifts feeding the flames, kept watch on the dark while the others slept. Every shelter in this story was really a machine for one purpose: holding bodies close together through the night. The walls were never the point. The warmth between the people was. So go back one last time to that rock shelter in southern Africa. No door, no walls, no roof, just sedge, smoke, and the dark beyond the fire. But you were never alone on that bed. There were others pressed in beside you, breathing warm, feeding the same flame you were. That was the shelter. That was always the shelter. And in the 77,000 years since, we grew so good at building walls that we could finally live behind them completely alone, heated, sealed, and lonelier than any of those sleepers ever were. A house keeps the weather out. It was never the thing that kept us warm.